Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Nestor. I'm an associate of Michael Anthony with Michael Anthony's Painting. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to build your own wainscoting and install your wainscoting. So first, what I want to go over real quick, I'm going to run you through this real quick, is the prep work. I think that's super important, and I just want to make sure that I have that squared away as to where I start with my prep work. So first, I'm going to start with where to start with the wall. Here's, I'm going to show you in a second, I'm going to map out my wall and see what my fixed objects are. So for example, I'll show you in a minute here, I have this window. I don't want to start my project and then basically accommodate my window. I want to start with my biggest obstacle and then branch out from there so I don't meet that problem there. So I usually start there when I begin my projects. Alright, so next I want to start drawing out my project. I want to start seeing, I want to measure all my walls, and I want to measure out these boxes. I want to see how big the stiles, how thick I want them to be, the rails, how big I want my panel mold to be. So I'm going to start drawing everything out. And in that drawing, I'm also going to measure all the outlets, all the ledges, everything that's going to be an issue that I'm going to have to cut out, because you don't really want an outlet to be within your style, because you're going to come across problems. It's really easier if you can make it within that box. That's easy to cut out that 1/4 inch and put it right in. It's not really a big deal. But in that drawing, you want to make sure that you have all that covered. Next, when we start talking about drawing, the way that I like to draw my projects is using Google SketchUp. That way, it's a 3D type of deal. I'm not a big techie person. I'm actually really bad. But with that, I can see what my projects look like. I can literally have that in the room, and it's to scale. All my measurements are great, and I can make sure that everything's great. So if I want to make it bigger, smaller, thinner, larger, whatever, I can modify it there before I put it on my wall, and that doesn't cost anything. But when I start cutting and doing all that, now I'm investing in money with my materials. So I'll show you my project real quick just so you can kind of get an idea. But Google SketchUp is personally what I like to use. So here's my Google SketchUp project. Like I said, I'm like the worst techie person ever. So if I'm sure you all the time. If I could do this, you could do it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it takes a little bit to get used to, but it's no big deal. And like I said, I could modify everything in here to the sizes that I want if I don't like it. So that's pretty cool. And all these measurements are perfectly to measure. I mean, I don't know if you can see that, but look, it'll show me 19 inches right there. And then, you know, my rail here is 6 inches. So I could modify everything, which is pretty cool. So after we've done that, we start getting into the baseboards, or any type of trim that you have that you don't want. We're going to remove that and try to cause as little as damage as possible. The biggest issue we're probably going to have is cutting the caulking, which a lot of times we end up cutting into the drywall. But in the end, it's all going to be covered anyway, so we'll start removing everything. After we remove everything, we want to start, excuse me, we want to start chalk lining things. We want to start chalk lining really our studs, our stiles, and our rails. We want to chalk line our studs to make sure that we nail into something pretty strong. We're going to use adhesive behind everything, but just just to make it secure, we want to do our studs. Also, we want to do our stiles, because we want to fill as little amount of holes as possible. And if we can chalk line our stiles and where that's going to go, we could fire away with that 1/4 inch that's behind it, and that's going to be covered. So now it doesn't matter. We've concealed all of those holes. And our rails, we also want to chalk line those so we can have an idea of where it's going to be even. We're going to use a level in the end to make sure that it's good. But we want to have some type of a guide to set that in there. So aside from that, that's basically the basic prep work. I'm going to show you the little issues that I had, and I'm going to walk you through this project step by step. Hope you guys learned something. Alright guys, so pretty much I'm going just put a couple clips together for the 1/4 inch rip 4x8 sheets of MDF. Nothing crazy here, it's just like I said, a compilation of clips. My project was 48 inches tall, so this was a fairly easy deal. Really the only thing to keep in mind is that before we put on the wall, we want to make sure that we cut out our outlets. So we've mapped all our outlets, measured. I used my jigsaw to cut through. Want to make sure everything's level, but in the end, like I said, we're going to use a panel cap to cover any discrepancy between the 3/4 and 1/4 inch. So we want to make sure everything's level. We'll add some adhesive to the back, which you'll see in a minute here. And really just add to it. The only reason that I like to do the 1/4 inch on the back as opposed to just on the wall If you have any type of texture, it kind of looks weird when you put that panel mold around it. You see that texture. This gives it a smooth texture, covers it all, and it just makes it a clean project with nice dimensions. So, hi, there we go. Hi. Okay, so when we get to installing our 1/4 inch here, we want to add adhesive to the back. I happen to use liquid nails to really get it in there, and the purpose of that is going to be so it really sticks to the wall, and we don't have any void spaces where this thing can basically come loose. Another reason we're doing this is because we want to nail where we could conceal. So when I add that adhesive, I just use a scrap piece of wood, but you can use a trowel or any flat surface just to kind of spread that around. I'm trying to fast forward to get you through this project here, but you really want to spread it around and get to especially the areas that we're not going to nail. So I'm going to show you a clip here as I'm putting it up. I want to make sure this dry fit is right. It's over the outlet. I'm going to put a level to it, make sure that it's all good. And when it comes to the nailing part, everywhere I'm nailing is going to be a piece that's going to be covered. So my initial nailing, I start up top just to kind of set it and hold it. But that's going to be covered by my chair rail. So I mean, I could really go crazy as far as nailing because I'm not worried about covering everything because it's going to be covered by a type of molding. So all up top there, my chair rail is going to go. And when I start nailing vertically, that's where my stiles are going to go, which is going to cover everything. It's going to make this project easier, cleaner, less cover up. It's just a professional finish. This second sheet going up just kind of gives you an idea how the project's going, and then I basically do the whole room. All right, so when it comes to ripping your stiles and rails, this is all one thing. You want to make sure that everything's the same width. So my stiles were 4 inches. I'm going to set my table saw at 4 inches. I rip everything so that I can manage from the 4x8 sheet, and I'm just going to run them through. I want to make sure that everything's exactly the same size to keep the symmetry of the project. My rails were 9.5 inches, so I'll set those when I rip those. And for the most part, when you do your ripping, you want to do it all together and have it done, and then you're basically done with your cutting. So you just want to make sure that everything's the same size to keep your project even, looking professional. Just an overall great project. So I've found that building the project on the ground or assembling it before putting it on the wall is going to be your best bet. It's going to give you the best because your wall isn't plumb. So if you were to build it on the ground, everything's flat, you pocket hole everything, it's going to create less seams. It's all going to fit flush, and you're not going to battle with sanding a ton and making it fit to the wall. So in this in this part, I'm basically just pocket holing everything. All right, so in this next segment here, I'm basically going to build my project on the ground, like I said. I've ripped all my 3/4 inch pieces. I'm not doing any more cutting. Everything's pocket holed. So I have this basically reversed. So the face sitting against the floor is going to be the part that we see because I'm going to screw everything in here. So I'm just doing my general layout here where everything's going to go. I'm going to make sure it's square on the very first rail. From then I cut a spacer block because mine are 20 inches apart. So now I take all the guesswork out. I'm not pulling out a measuring tape, and I'm using that spacer block every single time. So what the advantage of doing this on a flat surface is going to be is that, like I said, your walls aren't going to be plumb. This is going to be perfectly flat. So now when I lay this against the wall, it's going to look perfect. It's not going. I don't have to fit the rails against the stiles and deal with that asymmetrical wall. This is going to be perfectly flat. It's going to be awesome. So when you're done, you caulk, you sand. The seams are going to be virtually hard. I mean, they're really going to be super hard to see, and that's really what you want in a project. You don't want to see those seams, and this is going to do that for you. I think a helpful tip when I did this is some panels might be a little larger, and you can't carry them up, so you can break them in pieces, assemble them in the room, and then that's just going to make your life a little easier as far as carrying the heavy weight. All right, as you can see, I've assembled my panels here. I brought them up, and this is exactly what I was talking about. This wall was pretty long, so I couldn't bring up one piece. I mean, even through the halls of my house, there's no way that I could make those corners. So I made two of them, and I'm gonna pocket hole the rails together, and we're gonna make it fit, as best as we can, which it's still gonna be an awesome fit. So at this point, I'm dry fitting everything. I know it's gonna fit. I'm going to put my level to it, make sure that everything's level, and I'm going to start my nailing. And once again, I can't stress how much or how important it is to nail where you're not going to see it. You really don't want to cover all these nail holes. I mean, why? There's no point. So everywhere that you see I'm going to nail, I'm going to nail where the chair rail is going to go, where my baseboard is going to go, and I've measured for my panel mold. I have a ½ inch on all of those styles. All around those styles, that panel mold is going to cover ½ an inch. So I'm putting every single nail where it's going to be covered, and that's going to be huge. Everything else is held back by adhesive, so it's just a clean project to do that. The less filling is going to be better. That's my little guy there. I mean, this clip is kind of redundant, I guess, but I had to show off my little guy helping me out, or kind of helped me out in this project. Just for the sake of the video, I videotaped the baseboards. I'll make a video for baseboard install later, but it's just basic baseboard install, just so you can see. All right, so I've been doing some trim carpentry for, a little bit of time now. I've done a handful of baseboards and crown molding and panel molding and all that stuff. And I came across a video from DFW Crown, big shout out. And they introduced me to CA glue. I had no clue what it was, but when usually I do my cuts, I'd fit it, I'd shim behind, to basically get this perfect fit. When DFW Crown put a video on CA glue, this stuff is magical. I mean, I really think it's like magic from a unicorn, because you basically put this glue on, you put the activator on, and within 3 seconds, it holds it pretty strong. So now I can use that, and I basically put my corners together, a perfect finish. I set that thing in there. As you can see here, I mean, it's like a 3 second, delay, and I have that product. So I bought mine from Rockler. You can get yours like at Hobby Lobby or some type of store like that, but this CA glue is full blown magic. Okay, so to understand panel mold and how to cut panel mold, you kind of have to see it like crown. You have to cut it the way that it's going to sit on the wall. So if you look at that initial clip, the way that I set my miter saw is I ripped just a couple pieces of 3/4 inch, which is what that panel mold is going to sit on, and I glued it to my saw on both sides. So now this panel mold is being cut the way that it's going to sit on the wall. I'm doing all these rips. It's just going to be the same length. So what I did, I just put a stop. I used a scrap piece of baseboard, and I'm just gonna put it to length and rip, because I want the same thing. I want the same product, kind of like I did my 3/4 inch for the table saw. I want this. I don't want to measure this. This is gonna take forever because I have so much to cut. So at this point, I set a stop. I glued my blocks to my miter saw, and it's pretty much brainless. I'm gonna do the cuts from one side to the other over and over again, because I want the same product throughout my project. The whole point is to have symmetry, and we can do this in a good amount of time when we have our setup right. So I think that this is a pretty good setup, having that stop block. And in the end here, this little clip, I grab all my cuts here, and it's going to be all the same. That was pretty quick. I ripped all that in about, I want to say, 10-15 minutes. Okay, so walking through the panel mold install, I've dry fit everything. I cut my four stiles and rails on here, and I already made sure that they were at the perfect length. So when I put my stop on my saw, I knew that it was going to be the same. I like to set mine in. I know that they're going to be snug, so when I put that bottom rail on there, it's going to hold.
And at this point, as you can see, my first box there, I'm just gonna use my 18 gauge brad nailer, and I'm gonna start nailing them in. And I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You want to get pretty clean seams so that caulking and all that is very minimal. And you know, at this point, I'm just going to speed through everything so you can get a general idea of what the look looks like, what the process is like. And it's really not that big of a deal because the left or the right, they're the same thing. If you could flip them upside down, it would fit the other side, which is kind of cool. So this is a pretty easy, the easy part of the project. At this point, I'm installing the panel cap. Kind of a tough view, I guess, but I had installed that right wall there. You can see how that lip comes out just a little bit. My panel cap was actually a little longer. It was about an inch longer than I needed it to be, and that's no big deal. I just threw it on my table saw, cut off what I needed. I actually want that overlap a little bit because I'm gonna add the chair rail under there, and that overlap is gonna sit right on top of that chair rail, which is gonna be super cool because when that's cocked, that's actually all going to look like one piece. So like I said, this is the part that covers all discrepancies, and that's it. All right, so the chair rail install is basically like baseboard cuts. Not much to it, but I just want you to see the process, how that butts up to the panel cap. Um, One-man project here, a little tough, but I just want a visual so that you can see the project. When you do your project, you know, you can kind of hopefully get a feel from here. But pretty basic, like I said, just like baseboard cutting on here. Oh, so this is the finished product after obviously paint, sand, caulk, all that stuff. The finished product, my daughter's room. She has the best room in the house now, so that's pretty cool. She loves it. It was a fun project, and you know, I hope to see you guys do the same. So good luck.